call to order this special meeting of Wednesday, February 22nd at a different time, 6:30 here, of the City of Santa Barbara Airport Commission, and request a roll call, please.
Carl Hopkins.
Here.
Bruce Miller.
Here.
Craig Arcuri.
Here.
Dolores Johnson. Karen Kahn.
Here.
Kirk Martin.
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the first item is public comment. Any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction that is not on the schedule. Do we have any public speaker slips?
No slips, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm going to change the order a little bit, if I may. I think our liaison reports, we're lucky to have our normally have our two council members. Today we have one. I think we ought to give them the... Oh, excuse me, didn't see you back there. So we do have both of them, and I don't think we should make them wait until... I don't think we should make them wait until all of this other in case they have to leave. So we'll start with Councilman from the City of Santa Barbara, Frank Hotchkiss.
Thank you.
Well, it's the hat. Obviously the story is water. It's a good story this time around. 2 weeks ago we had 18% in Catchment. Today we have over 40%. Biggest storm in 20 years. And it's expected that it may go up to as much as 50%. The level right now is 708 feet, 708, and it can go to, the spillway is 753, I think is the number. So that gives you an idea of what we got to go, but it's still draining there. We did have some major losses. Two huge Italian pines on Anapamu. Interestingly fell right at the door of our city attorney. When I saw that, I called him. I said, "Figure out a better route home because you're not going the usual way." Next week we talk about average unit development and AUD and how we might halt that or put a pause in it so we can consider really where the program is going. And the worry there, unlike Goleta, we are concerned about boosting too much traffic, et cetera, in our streets. So that's the next major thing to look at. And I think that's all I've got right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Goleta? Nothing to report. Okay.
No rebuttals.
No rebuttal. So now we will go to the consent calendar. We have the minutes, recommendation that the Airport Commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday the 18th. We also have the property management report, recommendation that the commission receive the monthly property management report. And I would like to point out at this time that we have 3 tie-down spots, city tie-down spots, 119 a month, substantially cheaper than any place else on the airport to tie down. And we also have 2 of the new beautiful T-hangers available. So if anybody listening or in the audience needs a tie-down or a T-hanger, just contact the airport and they'll be happy to set you up. I'd like a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moved. Passed. So let's see, notices. That on Friday, February 17th, the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at 5 p.m. So, commission matters. Next item here we have is we have to elect a chair, a vice chair, and make subcommittee assignments. So, I'm going to throw the floor open to nominations for a chair and a vice chair, and then we'll cover the committees afterwards.
I would like to nominate Ms. Khan for chair.
I accept.
Any other nominations for chair? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And a nomination for vice chair.
I nominate Carl Hopkins.
I would second that nomination for Mr. Hopkins.
Well, I won't refuse, but I was going to suggest that having been vice chair once and chair twice in the last 3 years, that if somebody else would like to be vice chair, I'd be more than happy to let them
Yield the
do
chair.
that. And if not, I will certainly accept. You would like it?
Sure.
Kirk? I will defer to Kirk, if that's acceptable.
Absolutely.
We have a motion for Kirk as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Kirk is our vice chair and Karen Khan is our chair. Now, I understand that apparently the norm is to turn this over to you folks at the next commission meeting.
I think you can carry on for the end of the
So
meeting.
I'll carry on
You're doing
then.
so well, we don't.
Okay, we have the subcommittees, air service, budget, general aviation, ground transportation, and lease review. Is there anybody who would like off? Yes, ma'am. Go.
Mr. Chair, could I make just a couple of comments on the committees?
Yes.
We did some consolidation from prior years because we found that some of our committees sort of overlapped. And so under Air Service, we moved the previous Marketing and Community Relations Committee to kind of go together with Air Service because that's the goal of marketing pretty much is Air Service and promoting the airport. We've also eliminated the Planning Committee. The Noise Abatement Committee will meet as needed, and we will have reports in commission agenda regarding noise abatement activities each month. And we also eliminated the Master Plan Subcommittee because the Master Plan at this point is pretty much, the plan itself is done and we're just finishing up the EIR. So we wanted to eliminate that one. Any planning activities for general aviation would be under the General Aviation Committee, and lease review has always played a big role. So just to let you know the changes.
Thank you. Is there anybody who would like to be off one of these committees? Then apparently we're going to stay almost the same. Due to conflict of interest, Dolores, being working for an FBO, Dolores Johnson, will be unable to be on the lease review committee. And unless there are objections, I would like to join that committee in her place. Hearing no objections, we'll make that change. Everything else will stay the same?
I was going to
Yes.
volunteer to be the alternate for the ground transportation if it needs one.
Okay. Karen Khan is alternate for ground.
We should also have an alternate in lease review.
Yeah, I'd be happy to
Oh,
be.
yes,
I'd be happy to be an alternate for the lease review.
Okay,
Now,
so.
you're not a tenant, are you, anymore? No, okay.
Are there any other vacancies with the consolidations and whatnot? Are they all full?
Everything is full. Yes, we have, I'll review. Air Service is Karen Khan, Carl Hopkins, Jim Wilson with Bruce Miller as a alternate. Budget is Bruce Miller, Craig Arcuri, Jim Wilson with myself as an alternate. General Aviation is Craig, Karen, and myself with Bruce as a alternate. Ground Transportation is Kirk Martin, Dolores Johnson, Bruce Miller with now Karen Khan as an alternate. And Lease Review is myself, Kirk Martin, Bruce Miller, and Craig Curry as an alternate. I presume you have all of that?
Or she'll rewind the tape.
See, yes, it's all on tape, hopefully. Okay, the next is administrative item here is the airport zoning ordinance technical revisions. Recommendation that the Airport Commission receive and comment on the draft revised airport zoning ordinance.
Yes, Commission, tonight Andrew Vermont will do the presentation on the zoning ordinance.
Mr. Chair and Airport Commissioners, I appreciate that the words zoning, ordinance, technical, and revisions are all very dull, so I'm going to try to move quickly through this. I'll talk a little bit about what the airport zoning ordinance is, what the new zoning ordinance program that the Community Development Department is working on, what that's about, why that affects the airport, and then I'll talk a little bit about what the technical revisions are and where all that goes following this meeting. The airport zoning ordinance was adopted in 1974. It was intended to provide sort of the normal zoning stuff as well as protection of the Goleta Slough, access to the National Air Transportation System, and provide for the economic self-sufficiency of the airport and also coordination with the surrounding community and unincorporated Santa Barbara County, City of Goleta, and UCSB, of course. The airport's divided up into 7 base zones, and it also has a specific plan and an overlay zone, the specific plan being the north side industrial area, and then the special district, SD3, is the coastal zone. This is how it's laid out. It's principally the airfield and Goleta Slough Reserve are the 2 largest zones. The green on the map there is aviation facilities. That's aviation-dependent uses. And then on the north side of Hollister, we have some other industrial and commercial zones. And I want to draw your attention to these little things that I've circled here, the commercial recreation zone and our 2 overlay and specific plan zones. And then I'll also point out that we have a little portion of the PR zone, which is not in Title 29, the Airport Zoning Ordinance, but is in Title 28. All of that property is owned by the state of California, so it doesn't actually apply because the state can preempt local zoning. So the new zoning ordinance is called UNZO by the Community Development Department. It was started in 2014, and it's the first really substantial overhaul of our zoning ordinance. It's been amended a number of times over the 80 years or so, but it's never been reorganized in any sort of comprehensive manner. The intent of it is to make the zoning ordinance more intuitive and easier to use for the public. Doing any development in the city of Santa Barbara is already a challenge. The regulatory framework could be made a little bit more simple. It's also will be removing outdated content having to do with court cases, as well as removing ambiguity. I personally don't find 4 stories or 45 feet to be that confusing, but it has caused problems in the past. 45 feet is clearer, so it's being reduced to just that. The new zoning ordinance is organized into 5 divisions, so if you're looking for zones, all the zones are in one spot, all of the permit requirements are in one spot. It's a little bit easier to wrap your head around if you're coming at it for the first time. This reorganization of the zoning ordinance affects the airport zoning ordinance, Title 29, in a few ways. Mostly that the airport zoning ordinance has a lot of references to the Title 28, the zoning ordinance. So all of those references need to be revised to point to the new locations in Title 28. Also, the proposed creation of a commercial restricted zone would be abbreviated CR, and the Title 29 uses CR as a commercial recreation zone. So rather than forcing community development to change their entire nomenclature based on that one specific redundancy, I'd suggested that we rename the commercial recreation zone at the airport. So specifically, the edits are to add the word airport to the commercial recreation zone, so the CR zone becomes the ACR zone. And we'll also be renaming the specific plan zone and the coastal overlay zone to be consistent with Title 28's new nomenclature. The next steps for the UNZO process, to which we're going to just attach Title 29 and let it be carried through for these minor technical revisions. The next steps are an open house that will be happening at the Faulkner Gallery at the Central Library tomorrow from 10 to 1, and then it will be at a pair of Planning Commission evening meetings on March 2nd and 9th. And if people are interested in zoning, they can look at santabarbaraca.gov/NZO and look at the draft Title 28. So my recommendation is just that the Airport Commission provide comment to Planning Commission, Ordinance Committee, and City Council on the technical revisions, if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I have a question. The commercial recreation, or the airport commercial recreation zone, that's currently where all those cars are parked, right? What used to be the long-term parking lot, is that area?
A portion of it is, that's correct. The golf course is also commercial recreation.
And so obviously, that zoning requirement is because we couldn't put industrial stuff there because of flood or?
Floodway.
Floodway, right. So things like fields or baseball fields or parking lots, that would be fine. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Did you have a lot of debate in coming up with the use of the word airport? Was that an inspiration?
Commissioner Martin, it was about a 5-minute conversation, I think.
Well,
Any other comments?
Can we see the dates of the meetings one more time on the slide?
See if I can maneuver to it,
Oops, excuse
or
me.
I'll
Next,
let Deanna.
hold on. Next. Oh, I see. Oops.
There we go, the tomorrow is 10 to 1 at Faulkner. Okay, and the planning commission. Okay.
Okay, any other comments? I think we have no action to take on that, so we will go to the next one. Thank you very much for your presentation. Recommendation, this is Air Service Development. The Airport Commission received a presentation regarding the air service development at the airport by Air Service Consultant Kevin Shore, Campbell Hill Aviation Group LLC. The Air Services Committee and a number of people from the community heard this presentation, or probably an extended version of it, yesterday. It was very good. I hope all of you enjoy it, and I will turn it over to Kevin. You have, maybe I won't.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. I just wanted to say that, excuse my voice, we just returned last week. We were at what's called Routes Americas and made presentations to 10 airlines while we were there. So the presentation that you're about to see is a slimmed down version of what we presented to the airlines when we go and make a business case for the airport for air service. This is some of the information that we present so that they have good background on the community as well as our catchment area and number of passengers available to get on those flights. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Deanna's going to do the city portion, and then Kevin will do the air service portion.
All righty. Good evening, commissioners. This is an encore performance from our stakeholder meeting yesterday afternoon that some of you are present at. A great meeting, as you mentioned. We had fabulous participation, about 20 folks, both from tourism and private companies that came, so we were very happy with it. So we're going to give you just a little bit of a recap of that presentation yesterday. So we talked about from the perspective of when Hazel and other folks are out meeting with the airline carriers, the story that is being told about Santa Barbara. And it's being told as a story of a thriving community that speaks to the carriers, understanding that there is an economic vitality in this community that really demands air service and is well served by air service. We also talk about the community as being solidly behind the development of better air service with our community partners, with the chambers and Visit Santa Barbara. We talk a lot about tourism because obviously there's a very substantial tourism base in Santa Barbara, and Visit Santa Barbara does a fabulous job of getting those passengers to Santa Barbara, whereas we work on trying to get our passengers from Santa Barbara outbound. We talk about our business community because obviously that is of prime importance to our carriers. And we also talk about our efforts to gather more information from our business community in particular about their current travel habits, their needs for travel, and the service that they would most like to see moving forward. And we talk about, of course, the UCSB as being a significant player as the largest employer here in Santa Barbara, and in and of itself requires significant air service to get their mission done. We talk a little bit about the airport, of course, because we have a fabulous airport, so you'd want to talk about it being a brand new facility, going from 20,000 square feet 6 years ago to 72,000 square feet in a very efficient facility with low operating costs and just a high standard of service that is, of course, recognized by our community. It's very rare that we are rated anything less than a 5 by our folks on Facebook, and they check in. As soon as they arrive at the airport, they tell us they're here and what they think, so it's a great thing. We talk about air service incentives to the carriers. Of course, these are the kinds of incentives that we offer to all carriers that are interested in coming to Santa Barbara. They're pretty standard for the industry, and they're pretty much an expectation of any carrier coming into a market. And the biggest of those, of course, is really two things. It is landing fee waivers, which are possible for us to offer, and then substantial marketing support, both in Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara market, and in the destination market. And next. And of course, we talk a lot about Visit Santa Barbara because they just do an incredible job in the tourist market, getting our seats filled into Santa Barbara, and some of the really fabulous things that we collaborate with them on. And at this point, I'm going to pass to Kevin with the terminology. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty. All right, there you go.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Kevin Shore with the Campbell Hill Aviation Group. We are an economic and regulatory aviation consulting firm based just outside Washington, D.C. And one of the things that we focus on is air service development for airports of all shapes and sizes throughout the Americas and in Europe as well. So first, I'd like to share some terminology with you just to make sure you understand some of the things that I'm talking about. And I do realize it's almost 7 p.m., and I apologize. There will be math and numbers in this presentation, so I'll make it as painless as possible. When we talk about passengers, we're talking about total of both departing and arriving passengers, whereas many of you have probably heard the term enplanements, which is just people getting on airplanes. So when we're talking about market demand, we're thinking about people going in both directions. You'll hear me talk a lot about my inability to move the slides, about O&D passengers. So these are passengers starting or ending their trips here at the Santa Barbara Airport. You could think of O&D passengers as those passengers who are checking a bag here or getting a bag off their airplane. So they're starting and ending their trips here, and we're curious about where they're going, how are they getting there, and how much are they paying to get there. We then break that down into passengers per day each way. So how many passengers per day are going from here to Las Vegas and from Las Vegas to Santa Barbara on average? So we can break down the annual numbers into per day each way. Load factor is essentially the percentage of seats filled, pretty self-explanatory. But sometimes you've got to keep in mind that even though an airplane can be very full, you need to take into account how much people are paying to get on that airplane. So we have to look at the traffic, but also the revenue side as well. And yield, how much are people paying per mile to travel on that route? And then the catchment area. So the catchment area is the geographic area of residents that should be using Santa Barbara as their primary airport. So we break up this area into the people that should be using this airport versus other airports. And then we look at something called leakage. And leakage is actually the passengers that should be using this airport but are using other airports. So if you get down these definitions, then this will be an easy ride for everyone. So just to quickly review, we currently have 7 nonstop destinations, 21 peak day departures. For the month of February, our seats are up 11% since last February. Departures are up 4%. The average aircraft size is up from 60 to 64. So we're seeing a lot of positive momentum since last February. So you could see Americans flying to Phoenix 5 times a day with the CRJ 900, which is a 76-seat aircraft. As you know, Americans started flying to Dallas again last June with the same 76-seat airplane, and it's performing so well that they're going to start flying that with an A319 in April. So those of you familiar with the A319, that's a 124-seat aircraft. So we're going to see a 63% increase in capacity on the Dallas route. They've been very impressed with the performance so far, and I can't remember the last time I saw a route get upgauged this quickly since starting. So that's a huge testament to the power of the market. Alaska is flying 1 flight a day to Portland. Right now they have 1 flight a day to Seattle. They did add a second flight last summer, but because of their merger with Virgin America and their need to put different aircraft around the system, they'll unfortunately only have 1 Seattle flight this summer. But they did say they hope to bring it back for summer of 2018. With United, they're flying 6 a day to San Francisco with a mixture of the 50 and 76-seat airplanes. LA is 4 times a day with 50-seaters, and Denver is twice a day with a mixture of 50 and 75-seat airplanes. In terms of capacity, right now, seat departures, or the number of seats departing per day, on average, United is providing about 51% of the seats in the market, American 37%, Alaska 12%. The box there shows you the shift in percentage points year over year. So because American's flying to DFW this February and more capacity to Phoenix, you could see their share is up by 7 points year over year, which primarily came from United's share. In terms of departures, United actually has 59% of departures, but because on average they're flying smaller aircraft than American, they've got a smaller share of the total capacity or seat departures. We talked a bit about load factors. As you all probably and hopefully know, some of the routes here from Santa Barbara are indeed very full. Portland on average is 86% full. United's 86% full to Denver. Seattle's 85% full. So some of the routes are doing well. Doing very well and very full. Then you look at San Francisco and you could see it's only 2/3 full. But then again, that's where I implore you to keep in mind the revenue side. United generates very high fares over San Francisco, so they're more than happy with the flight only being 2/3 full. We do have a strong fare environment here. The average one-way domestic fare is $241, so that is higher than the average U.S. domestic fare. It's higher than average domestic fares for all of California. You could see some of the other benchmark airports in Southern California there, so you could see the fares here are a tad bit higher than some of the other airports. Passenger history. As you could see, the numbers are starting to turn in the right direction. Since June, since American started the DFW service, we've started to see passenger numbers rebounding. So calendar year 2016 traffic was up 6%. December 2016 alone was up 13%. So we're starting to see some real positive growth year over year. And what's happened over the past 10 years or so, you could see the capacities drop to some of the lowest levels that we've seen. But again, the capacity numbers are starting to move in the opposite direction as well. And even though we did lose 5 routes over the course of a few years, nearly every one of these losses was because of a change in corporate strategy at the airline, not because of weakness in the Santa Barbara market. So we're going to talk now about what we call our leakage analysis. And I talked about the catchment area earlier. And we define the catchment area as 2 hours to the north and west. So it does include San Luis Obispo and Santa Maria, but because they have so much less service than we do, for definition purposes of the catchment area, we essentially make believe the airports aren't there. And then down to the south, we go about 1 hour. So effectively halfway between here and LAX. But for all of you familiar with the traffic between here and LAX, you know that that's a lot more than a 1 hour drive to the south. And you could probably argue that people who are living just past the outline of our catchment area could probably more quickly drive here to Santa Barbara than they could to LAX. But for purposes of our analysis, this is how we define the catchment area. We also can look at airline booking data by zip code and look at where we see a drop-off in terms of passengers using our airport and not using our airport. Within this catchment area, we have some very high median household income zip codes. And as you could see, some of the highest median household incomes zip codes are closest to the airport. So this is one thing, as you can imagine, airlines really like to see. This is something that really catches their attention. Within our catchment area, we have over 700,000 people, 242,000 households, a mean household income of $86,554, and that includes, of course, the cities of Santa Barbara, Goleta, Montecito, Carpinteria, and then the northern cities, San Luis Obispo and Santa Maria. And what we've got here is a plot of all those passengers within the catchment area who are using the Santa Barbara airport. So we know for a fact that even though we define our catchment area as 2 hours to the north, we know that people at least 2 hours, if not more, are regularly using our airport. And again, if you think about it, even those people who live closest to San Luis Obispo and Santa Maria, if they're going to drive south to another airport, they're going to have to drive past here to get to LAX. So we know that Santa Barbara is definitely part of their consideration set when they're looking for airfares and where to fly from. So now the numbers part. So we're looking at the Las Vegas market. That's actually our largest market from our catchment area, but we only have 3,505 annual passengers that flew in or out of Santa Barbara to get to Las Vegas. We have another 114,000 that used another airport. So it's quite ironic that our largest market from the catchment area is a market where we don't even have nonstop service here. But again, if you start thinking in terms of what an airline's looking for and looking for prospective markets, we know we have this captive audience of 117,000 people annually that want to go to or from Las Vegas and would prefer to do that from this airport versus having to drive down to LAX or Burbank. So on average, we have 160 passengers per day each way going between our catchment area and Las Vegas, but unfortunately 97% of them are leaking or using another airport. To look at a market where we have nonstop service like the Bay Area, you could see we have 54,689 annual O&D passengers using Santa Barbara to travel to or from the Bay Area. But again, another 57,414 traveling out of other airports. And why are they doing that? They're doing it for lower fares, they're doing it for more frequencies, they're doing it because of preferred airplane type, their mileage program. It could be lots of different reasons. But again, even in a market where we have nonstop service like the Bay Area, 51% of those 154 passengers per day each way are using another airport. So in summary, in the domestic market, we do leak about 2/3 of our traffic to other airports. So it's our job to work with the airlines to get more capacity, to get better fares, so that we can retain as many of those passengers as possible who naturally should be using this airport versus others. To slice and dice the data a couple of different ways, the markets where we have the most leakage, Las Vegas, 114,000. The New York airports combined, another 75,000 passengers are using another airport. And then we come to a market where we have nonstop service, which is Denver. Denver is the third highest market for leakage. We're currently leaking 63,000 annual O&D passengers to other airports. Why is that? Maybe it's because there's only 2 flights a day, because of the fares. They don't like the plane United's flying. Could be a lot of different reasons. On this chart, we show Dallas as an unserved market because for purposes of this analysis and all the analyses we do, we only look at markets where we've got at least a full year's worth of data. So hopefully if we're doing this presentation to you again next year, we'll have some insight into the Dallas market and see how much of the leakage we've been able to recapture with nonstop service. So we, believe it or not, travelers do prefer to fly Santa Barbara with nonstop service. So in those markets where we have nonstop service, you could see Santa Barbara does capture 40% of the passengers from the catchment area. In the markets where we don't have nonstop service, that's the pie chart on the right, we only capture 19%. So we know that in markets where we have nonstop service, we can effectively double our ability to capture passengers from the catchment area. And this answers a big question in the mind of the airlines, because the airlines want to know and will model what happens when I start nonstop service from the airport, and this helps clear up one of the big hurdles for them in terms of analyzing new markets. In the markets where we have nonstop service, you can see we do a pretty good job retaining traffic to SFO, to San Francisco. We retain or capture about 65% of the passengers in the catchment area going to San Francisco. But again, there's a market like Denver where we're only retaining 34%. So a lot of it depends on the market. It depends on the frequency of service, the capacity, the fares, a whole lot of different things. So looking at our total leakage distribution, so from our catchment area, 69% of our leakage is going to LAX, which is probably not surprising to you all. 12% to Burbank, 12% are using San Luis Obispo, and that's probably because these people live closest to that airport. That's their natural airport. They just want to do whatever's convenient. On the airline side, it's very interesting to see in the second pie chart to the right that 24% of the leakage is going to Southwest, 23% to American, 22% to United. So it's pretty evenly split amongst those 3 carriers. but only 11% of the leakage goes to Delta, 9% to Alaska and Virgin America combined, which is interesting for us because when we make a business case to Delta or Alaska or Virgin America about more capacity here and more flights here, we can then say to them, look, you're not getting these passengers or getting a large proportion of these passengers at other airports. So it makes it a much easier case to make in terms of nonstop service to them. And similarly to what I showed earlier, our top international destinations, our top markets, London Heathrow, we currently have 2,069 annual O&D passengers flying from Santa Barbara to London Heathrow. They're obviously connecting over another airport. But we have another 31,488 who are driving to another airport to fly to London. They're most likely driving to LAX. So we have a total market size of about 46 passengers per day each way. 94% of them are choosing to drive to another airport rather than starting their trip here. On average, about 92% of our international passengers are leaking to other airports. So to put it into another context, you can see of all of our international bookings, 87% of them are using LAX, only 9% are using Santa Barbara, or put another way, 96% of our leakage is going to LAX. So this is one of the key things that we look at when we're talking to airlines about new routes, about additional capacity, about why they should serve Santa Barbara versus another airport. The leakage analysis is a pivotal part in terms of the business case when we're putting it together. Going forward, our first and foremost imperative is to keep what we have. We want to keep what we have. We want the frequencies, the capacities, keep the airlines. And then there's other new markets that we're looking at and talking to airlines as well. Some of those real quick are Las Vegas, Oakland, Sacramento, San Jose, Salt Lake City, Reno, Vancouver. We're talking to all sorts of different airlines. Some of these routes could potentially happen in the next 6 to 12 months. Some may take another 5 years. A lot depends on what's going on with that airline at the time. Do they have the fleet available to do it? Does adding Santa Barbara to one of these cities really match their corporate strategy at the time? And what's happening in the economy as well. That's all that I have for tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything that I've shown tonight.
Any questions of the commissioners?
Yeah, I have a question regarding the Air Service Committee event that you went to where you said you talked to 10 airlines.
Yes.
How many total airlines were there? Or do you just talk to everyone that's there because they're there because they're interested?
I would, I would say about 30
keep in
to
mind
40.
that this is Routes Americas,
Yeah.
which includes South America, North America,
Right.
and Canada.
And European airlines were
Yes.
there as well. So there were probably a good 40 to 50 different airlines there. And the way it works is we submit a wish list of airlines that we want to meet with, and the airlines submit their wish list. It really is a speed dating event for airlines and airports. It honestly is. After 20 minutes, they ring the bell and everyone goes to their next meeting.
Well, you
so
do get a 5-minute warning.
You do. So we secured 10 meetings with all different airlines, some of the incumbent carriers here, some airlines that we're having productive discussions with. In the course of a 20-minute meeting, some of these were pie-in-the-sky airlines where it doesn't hurt to sit down for 20 minutes, tell them about the market. At the end of 20 minutes, they might say, oh, that sounds interesting, let's talk more. They might say, yeah, this really doesn't fit our strategy going forward. So it's a great event to be able to schedule formal meetings with the airlines, and then there's other networking opportunities to talk to them informally as well. And there's hundreds of airports that attend as well, so it's also a good opportunity to talk to other airports about what they're doing.
Thank you.
I thought the top destinations information was interesting, and that Las Vegas would be up there. And we've had Las Vegas service on and off over the years. Are there any particular challenges distinct to getting service to Las Vegas that are different from just getting service to anywhere? Are there particular hurdles there?
Well, again, the nature of the Las Vegas market is that it's highly leisure. So it acts a bit differently than some of the other markets do. The key thing that we need to, that we work on is who is the natural carrier? who's going to want to add flights to Las Vegas. And there's no natural hub carrier in Las Vegas like there is when you think of United at San Francisco or you think of American at DFW. But there are carriers who are considering adding new spokes to Vegas, so we're focusing on those ones most carefully.
Thank you.
Are any carriers still demanding any kind of subsidy from the individual city or airport in order to serve it, or is that concept kind of gone out the window?
We're hearing much less of it from the carriers. There was a point in time where literally no carrier would consider a new route without some kind of revenue guarantee, or a travel bank or something of that nature, but we're hearing much less of that nowadays. I think the airlines have learned what works and what doesn't work in terms of starting nonstop service, and we really need to focus on those markets that will be economically sustainable in the long term. So an airline's realizing that there was a time where they would go into a market with a revenue guarantee to see if it would work or not, and then at the end of the 1 or 2 year revenue guarantee, they say, well, thanks for the money, things didn't work and we're out of here. And some airlines have got a real bad reputation for doing that, and there are a lot of hard lessons learned by some communities as well. So we are hearing fewer and fewer airlines wanting revenue guarantees, and I have to say, in the 10 meetings that we had last week, not one of them mentioned it at any time during the meeting.
However,
And
I would
they're-
add that they did request marketing support.
Right.
That was the one thing that we heard over and over. They want airports to help them gather the passengers and get them in the seats.
It's more important to grow the revenue base than it is to reduce the cost base in the beginning of the service.
Other comments? Oh, yes?
And the last one, in your personal opinion, with a stronger marketing program here in Santa Barbara aimed at pointing out that the idea of going to Los Angeles, and I can't imagine people drive to San Francisco, but on the other
Probably
hand, because I guess I wonder how much it just needs to be a better education program, because so many people have a, shall I say, a misguided notion that the $87 fare on Southwest is such a deal, but they haven't forgotten it costs them $187 to drive there, because sitting down and outlining the details and the costs all of a sudden makes it a much better economic, and I don't think most people work that out for themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know, in your mind, do you think we have a, should we say, a lot of elasticity in the marketing we could do to point out that using Santa Barbara is really an economic forte, not to mention the less hassles with security, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, I think it definitely needs to be part of a marketing program. If some people see a fare that's $5 cheaper each way out of another airport, there's nothing we're going to be able to do to stop some people. And that's all that they're going to use in terms of their solution set and their considerations. But we definitely do need to focus to the extent possible, and I can let Deanna talk about that better, in terms of helping people understand the true costs.
Any other? Oh, go ahead.
I guess I could just add to that, as far as our marketing program goes, we really are looking at recalibrating, retooling some of our marketing, especially as we've seen this uptick in service. It's actually a very fortuitous situation for us to be able to be a little bit more aggressive in our marketing when we know that we have more service that we can offer.
Yeah.
When the airlines ask for marketing support, do they do co-op advertising where we're using some of their advertising, or is it all locally produced?
Work with them. Usually there are some co-op opportunities with the air carriers. Usually advertising with them doesn't quite come for free, but I say more of our co-op opportunities really come with, say, Visit Santa Barbara, that we can do things together, and we have a strong tradition of doing that. As far as filling seats locally in Santa Barbara, that's really that's going to be the airport's job to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent report.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have too many items to address tonight. Once again, I want to brag about our passenger count for January, that was up again 5.76%, which is really great. And as Kevin said, April 4th, we get the Airbus 319 for our flight to Dallas, which is going to assist us as well. Marketing-wise, just this last month with the film festival, hopefully.
I am so sorry. Thank you. New routes here. With the film festival, you noticed the banner that we had. So that's our co-op advertising with the film festival. Our master plan will have a report to Airport Commission next month on the status of negotiating with some of the environmental agencies. The Wildlife Hazard Management Plan has been submitted to FAA, and once they concur with what we submitted, that project will be completed, and then we'll have the plan to implement. We are going to be doing runway 725 complete overlay, and so we're going to grind it down and build it back up. That's going to start this September 5th, I believe, or thereabouts, and go until mid-November. The important part of that project is that it'll all be night work, and we have been talking with the airlines about the new schedule, so we will close at 10 o'clock at night for all arrivals, and then for departures, it would be 6 o'clock in the morning. So that really, at this point, only affects United, and we talked with them today, and they're aware of it, and we'll make some schedule changes so that we don't lose flights unnecessarily. What else? The airline terminal solar project, Jeff's been working on that with a new developer, and hopefully we'll have the agreement negotiated in the next month or so, and Jeff will make a presentation to Airport Commission on the new project. I think that's all. I did want to call to your attention the noise abatement report. It's item F on your agenda, and you'll notice there's a lot of calls from Hitchcock area, and I just wanted you to know that while there's a lot of calls, it's really just like one person doing the calls on a daily basis. So we're trying to work with all of the constituents in the area. And with that, I'll close unless you have questions for me.
I have a question. The status quo with the car dealership?
Yes.
I had a question on the volume of calls from a single individual. Can you characterize the nature of those complaints? Is it commercial, GA?
I think some were helicopters, but I'll turn it over to Tracy because he'll know.
I would need to research that individual, but most of the time when we get one call, and it happens several times, they're frustrated to a point when something flies over, they call. I'll double check on this one, but I believe that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? We're adjourned.